Hey guys, how are you doing? It's Joe here again from Impala Search, and I'm delighted to be hosting another episode in our Impala Invites webinar series in Sweden. For those of you that don't know, this series is aimed solely at HR and talent acquisition specialists to give them valuable insight and advice on how to boost their careers. We've had some amazing guest speakers so far, and the podcast we found our Impala Insights page on our website, and they've been launched Series 1 on Spotify. This week, I'm delighted to be inviting Lisa. I've tried pronouncing Lisa's last name 100 times. I have apologized, but I can't get it right, so I'll let her do that. But she's talent acquisition manager at Mina Technologies, and today we're going to be discussing a really interesting topic around coaching and development. But first of all, as I said, I'll let Lisa introduce herself, so over to you.
Thank you, Joe.
No worries.
Yeah, my last name or surname isn't so beneficial for the international globe that we're living in. But it's Lisa Sjostedt, and I'm super happy to be here today. And hopefully, together we'll be able to share some really learning or interesting perspectives on learning and the learning topic. And to give everyone a super brief introduction to who I am. I could basically be described as a happy HR nerd, but I'm also often quite curious, and I tend to be able to find inspiration as long as I'm surrounding myself with talented people. And this has led me into a bunch of different roles within the HR field, and especially in different industries, which is maybe one of the thrills in HR for me that is not so industry specific. Meaning I could more or less create value in any given organization, which suits
cool.
my yeah, it is pretty cool. And it suits my curiosity and maybe restlessness quite well.
Cool. But no, I think like you say, that HR talent acquisition, you can just impact a business so much. And that's why we're here, isn't it, Lisa? I suppose to discuss your journey, find out a little bit more about your experiences and go from there. I think at the start we mentioned we're going to touch on Flexlink, but quite briefly, and then break down into your experience at Semcon, and then obviously Mina Technologies, where we're going to spend most of our time. But I think what stood out to me at Flexlink was you obviously started off as a generalist in HR, and then you went on the L&D side and you actually created the Flexlink Academy. So do you want to just tell us a little bit more about this and why you thought that it was so important?
Yeah, and to get started, Flexlink is a very interesting company. It's Swedish, but it's owned by a very large or huge Italian group called Quisha. And Flexlink is in the industry automation business and focusing a lot on Industry 4, where the modern technology that we have at hand today comes of great use for creating more efficient production flows. And here, Flexlink is world leading in many aspects of this technology. And this puts a lot of pressure on our workforce to always have the latest and greatest knowledge and know-how, which of course borders in quite good into the learning objective, because here we have a clear purpose and clear reason for why this is so important for the business of the company. And what makes it very interesting as well is given the relation we had with Quisha, which owns so many other companies in the same sector, but they all have their different specialities. We had a lot of employees that did rotations amongst these companies, and they were on all continents of the world. So we did a lot of rotation programs as well, where you'd come to Flexlink, or we shared resources of ours that went to another company and created these learnings. And we also did that for students in like internship programs or trainee programs. And all these factors created this huge need for continuous learnings and the need to, of course, embed it into our employees' daily work.
Yeah, I think it's really cool you mentioned there continuous learning. So why for you is that so important, Lisa?
I think a lot of studies have shown that pure classroom training, or when you're kind of set off to learn something, that isn't the best objective. And we tried to incorporate that at Flexlink as well. And the whole reason for us starting to work with what we came to call the Flexlink Academy is that we knew our vision and we knew where we were going company-wise. And then we began this huge work mapping what competencies and roles would we need to successfully pursue that vision and reach it. And when we started to get these competences and traits and roles, that's when we also started to assess where are we today and what gaps are there from our current competence and skills base or portfolio amongst our employees, and what gaps have we identified to where we need to be.
I think that's really important as well, isn't it? Having that clear vision and that goal. It's
exactly.
A lot of the times businesses overlook having the end goal in place because you need to know how to get there. And you just, I think I interrupted you there, Lisa, so I'm sorry, but I was getting a little bit excited. But you mentioned that you found gaps, and that's where the academy was. How did people respond when you were like, there's probably a gap here, we need to improve it? Because sometimes people take things the wrong way.
Yeah, absolutely. And here, of course, communication is absolutely key. But what it gave with connecting the vision and where we were going was to create this very purpose-driven change management when it came to our view on learning and competence. So it wasn't on an individual basis. It was, all right, we know we need to be the best in the world, and we know that the world is disrupting every day. So every day we need to be learning. Exactly, no pressure. So every day we need to learn something new. And in the way we kind of combined that communication package was, of course, absolutely key. And then here comes the maybe tricky part then. Aligning the overall company competence gaps with each employee's and individual's personal learning and development goals. So here we can find this sensitive relationship where we need to thread gently and present it in a fantastic way to align everyone's personal development goals and where they want to go, and make sure that that is aligned with where the company wants to go. And in retrospective, I would say that here we could have focused a little bit more to make it even more successful in launching it. Because if we had tapped in to every individual's motivations and areas that they wanted to excel, and would make sure that they would be more aligned with the organization's needs, then we would have created a more sophisticated way to map this out. And the benefit that I could see is that we could have increased the learning curve even more, because when people do stuff that they truly find inspirational, you tend to learn faster and more. And as well, employee turnover for many, a clear motivational career plan is important for that long-term tenure and to keep being attracted to the company for a long time. And we did bits and pieces of this really well, but we could have emphasized it even more to really make that matchmaking or alignment of driving forces that is so important.
I love the words you use in there, Lisa. You like rounding everyone up, ready to go out and smash it, which is really good. And I think a lot of what you just said there, we kind of touch on later with Mina Technologies and I suppose how you're putting things together. So I won't go into that too much, but I think what's really important is that you identified that it wasn't perfect. And then you've actually learned from that on how to improve it for the next time and to really take your knowledge and go forward. And people need to realize that the first time you do something, you're not going to get it 100% right. But the fact that you've identified that is definitely interesting for me. And I think from there, you went from Flexlink to, I suppose, a huge company in Semcon, which was completely different in itself. What was the main, I suppose, challenge for you making that shift from, obviously, Flexlink aren't small, but Semcon huge. So what was the main challenge there?
Yeah, and what was really interesting at Flexlink was the balance between Flexlink as a company and the group being Quisha. And Semcon combined those two perspectives in a very attractive way for me. So it was a group, and it held and still holds multiple entities, but it's considered more to be one organization and one company and one brand, which was very attractive to me. And also Semcon is a purely Swedish owned company, which maybe some of you listeners have preconditions or thoughts about Scandinavian leadership and Scandinavian businesses and our work culture, and this is very important for me and the culture I resonate very well with. So it was important for me that, or at least I knew that I wanted to stay within Swedish or Scandinavian businesses.
Yeah.
And Semcon is interesting as well because it is offering consultancy services, and we were more or less in all industries that you could come to think of, and we focused on product development based on human behavior. So the end user was very much in the center of everything, and we always circulated back to the promise of putting people first. And I mean, you can imagine here that what that does to an HR nerd like myself to get the chance to work with a company that says people first and has that as their external strategy as well.
I think that's amazing, though. Like you say,
yeah,
I love the fact you keep referring to yourself as a HR nerd as well, Lisa. I don't think there's anything nerd. I think it's really important because, like you mentioned, people actually make the business, and if you can get everyone under one mission and one, I suppose, end goal, then the business is going to drive forward. And I think that's really interesting when we look at Semcon, because when you were there, the HR department changed and shifted a little bit, didn't it?
Yeah, so when I joined, Semcon launched a reorganization within the HR department, and we went from being very decentralized to a bit more centralized. And one of the reasons for that was to share more knowledge within the entire HR community, but also to be able to hold more specialized competence and specialized roles. So what we did was to merge a handful of people into more group function, and we named us ourselves employee experience. And we actually got the benefit of focusing a lot on the good side of HR, when everyone is happy and satisfied. And then we kept some of our traditional teams in all our countries that we were present in for, more the day-to-day operations, the labor law, and supporting the manager on their day-to-day.
And everyone, gone, sorry.
No. And I mean, why we did this is where it becomes really interesting. And with Semcon and being in the consultancy industry, sense of belonging and having an identity with your consultancy agency can sometimes be tricky because you can tend to connect more with the company that you are consulting for, especially if you're working on their own sites. So you're not even in a Semcon building, or I mean, now you're remote, but when I worked there, you weren't. And the office and the place that you go to, of course, is a lot of that identity. And what we realized is that we are in a globalized world. We have the platform economy, growing gig economy. So consultancy agencies, I mean, what is that really? It's a middle hand that connects skills and competences with open projects and jobs. And when you are in that gig and platform economy, being the middle hand is at risk. You're risking becoming obsolete. So why would you choose to be connected to a consultancy agency? And for us, we realized that, well, our why or why we want to continue to exist in this sphere and platform is to have and be able to create a hub for our employees when it comes to learning and development, and a sense of belonging as being part of this bigger cog in the machinery, or having colleagues and friends and people to share experiences with and also learn from, so that you could pivot your own competencies and industry knowledge and map that career path for you. And that was our why. So it connects very well to our learning that we're going to talk about today, of course.
I think one thing that you've hit home at, I suppose, consistently throughout this so far, Lisa, is that sense of community and that sense of having a purpose and belonging. Before we move on to, I suppose, the ways in which you think it's effective to implement that, but why do you think it's so important, though, to put a focus on that community? Because some people are like, well, we just want contracts in that can do the best job possible, come in, do the job and leave. Why do you think that's so important in a business?
Well, I think that purely transaction-based work will inevitably move out of what we today call employers or organizations.
Yeah.
With the rise of the gig economies and these platforms that can communicate or medal these kind of positions.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are an individual that wants a purely transactional work, and there are a ton of these people, and they of course needs to find their platform where those needs can come of use and be utilized. So we need that, but we also need a hub where the people that wants this community, this affinity, learning together, being part of something bigger, they don't want to sell their own services or skills and competences and do that matchmaking for the projects and assignments themselves. Then these communities become super important. And I think overall, when we're talking about attractivity as an employer, it's so important to be crisp and clear in what you're offering and what sort of people and their needs you want to be attracted for or attractive for.
Yeah, I think that's really
What
important.
group of people that you're not. What were you saying?
Yeah, I was literally going to touch on that as well. At least I was going to say, I think a lot of time, especially on the other side of the fence, because we're so passionate about the business we work for, we know how amazing they are. We almost forget that actually we do need to present our business in the right way to attract the best talent. We can't take it for granted that everyone's going to think, oh, this business is amazing just because we know it is. So I think you've touched on a really good point there. And I think building on that though, like how do you go about doing something like that though? Because especially at a consultancy company, I imagine it's a lot harder than it is say now. But how did you go about doing that?
Yeah, so we started off by mapping our scope and mission, and we created almost like a wheel of tenure or life cycle that you as a talent or employee have within a company. And this is of course starting before the journey is even initiated, which is the employer brand. So we needed to cover that, and once you're attracted to the company, you need to experience this great recruitment and hiring process. And then the next phase comes, which is the awesome onboarding, truly setting you up for success. And then we connected the more traditional learning and development aspects. So talking a lot about growing into the new positions in the company, acquiring new knowledge. And we covered all of this in my group until the very end, where we also launched a new exit process. Because, I mean, we said that maybe starting unemployment should be like buying a train ticket. And I know this is a silly references, but stay with me. So you're buying this train ticket and you're getting on board the train and you're going for this crazy fun journey on it. And then you're reaching your final destination for that particular journey and you leave the train. But you should always have a return ticket for wherever you want to go on your next journey with us. So we kind of took that holistic perspective and mapped it into, all right, what is the scope for this HR team, the employee experience team, and that's how we created it. And we wanted all of these steps to scream attract all over them, always continuing to attract. And I'm sure that you've heard this tons as well, but often you hear people talk about retain. You need to retain your employees. 100%. But I mean, if you're in a relationship, you want to attract your partner every day, right? And not retain and almost captive them in that relationship. So why not take that perspective into an employment?
Exactly. I think if you were to ask my friends as well, we go into the relationship side, they'd probably say I need to listen to your advice, Lisa. So I think that's a question for another podcast. But I really like the analogy actually of the train, and like you say, planning where you want to go in the next journey, and even that return journey back, because that's often overlooked. But it's great that you obviously didn't overlook that piece. And I suppose with that, how did that then help the business going forward? Like, was it did you have a like better learning process in place? Was there better employee experience? How did it overall improve the company?
Yeah, I mean, we measured, of course, everything. And what is really interesting with the consultancy business is that you have a price tag, right, on everything. You know what every hour, every minute, and even down to what every second costs, and having that information comes with with both pluses and minuses. But our sales and operations teams at Semcon, they had these detailed calculations and everything, but previously it had not been used um, to view this employee or employment life cycle, or to assess what a recruitment could cost or what turnover costs, and of course not either what onboarding costed. And we did some extensive work in my team to gather this data and develop metrics around it to be able to create a more efficient and smooth experiences throughout all of this. So, I mean, if we're segueing into onboarding, for instance, to give an example of this, we had traditionally a very paper and pen analog process. Semcon, at least to my perspective, is an old company. It was born in 1980, and it had a huge legacy of assistants. So each manager more or less had their own assistant, and they did a fantastic way in keeping up with a lot of the administration, and of course they were involved in this onboarding as well. And when we launched the work to assess the current onboarding, we still printed the physical checklists and ticked them off with a pen, and everything was done. I mean, everything was done manually. We had a huge archive in our office space, and I mean, even the signing of contracts were done with paper and pen. So this was also starting a transformation towards a more digital way of working. Exactly. And we continued to streamline this process, and then we could actually see, okay, how much money can we save, etc., and how much more efficient can we be, and what will happen if we increase the engagement and inspiration throughout this process? What happens if you prolong the honeymoon phase of an employment? And what we also realized that we needed to tap way more into the pre-board phase of everything, and really utilize the hunger and curiosity that you have before joining. And these were only parts of the aspects that actually made that we managed quite a good year number wise. And we can circle back to that a little bit later as well. But learning, I mean, overall at Semcon had a much larger impact as well. I mentioned earlier that I'm in Sweden, and Semcon was a Swedish-based company. And Sweden as a country, we have a lot of automotive industry. And Gothenburg, where I am, our next largest city,
overpopulated.
Yes, is the home of Volvo. But we also have presence from Geely, Zev, Nevza, I mean, all these technology companies within the automotive industry. And automotive is actually such a big part of our nation's gross domestic product that the government and a few other authorities launched initiatives to relearn or retrain and transform the knowledge within the automotive industry, from like combustion engines to electric engines, autonomous cars, functional safety, and all these aspects. So it was also taking part and helping the government actually with creating these learning paths and learning programs where we'd retrain our own employees and bringing on mentorships and trainee programs to reskill and upskill the Swedish engineers. So it was a really fun approach to have.
I think that's really cool, like you say, the reskill and upskill. And I think we've just, I suppose, covered like 100 topics in that short little bit there, Lisa. You're just brushing over things that you've done. But I think the big key there is that automation saves time. But I think, like you said, we'll go into some numbers later. But you actually saw huge results from that, didn't you? From moving from that legacy process to a more, I suppose, modern and agile way of working. I think it's really important that people learn that you actually can change a business. It doesn't matter how old the company is. If you make these changes, it will have an impact, and more often than not, positive. And then I think finally, we're going to, I suppose, move on to Minna. I know that you're super passionate about Minna. It's something completely different right now. But I suppose just give us an overview of what attracted you to it, and just talk us through, I suppose, your process of going in and setting up the talent team within that startup environment and within FinTech.
I mean, absolutely. And Minna is something very, very different.
Yeah.
And I have finally found my home base here. It is a fantastic cluster of people creating Minna technologies, and we are currently blitzscaling within the fintech space.
Never heard that phrase before. It's cool. What is blitzscaling?
Scaling at immense speeds.
Okay.
Growing and growing and growing until you didn't know you could grow more, and then you need to grow a little bit more. Either way. So that is what we are in right now, going from the little startup to the more global multi-market scale-up company. We just did our Series B fund. We launched that January this year.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So yeah, definitely. So now we have the rundown and the vision going forward. And what we do is that we are providing a subscription management tool, and we are partnering up with banks to ultimately bring power to the modern consumer. And Minna, as a comparison then to Semcon, we were born in 2016. And Joachim, our co-founder and actually CEO, he got this idea when he was at the grocery store, and he tried to pay for his groceries, but he couldn't, because all of a sudden, his Spotify had been drawn, his gym membership had been drawn, and everyone can relate to this. So basically, the issue or challenge with subscriptions is when you have a bunch of them, and you probably do. I mean, the general household has somewhere between 11 and 20 subscriptions each, and it's increasing very fast. And I mean, the pandemic has definitely had an impact on that as well. I mean, can you come and think of any new subscriptions that you got during the last year that you wouldn't have anyway?
I probably hate to admit this, Lisa, but I did sign up to Disney Plus, which I probably shouldn't admit, but that's definitely on there. But I think now you mention it, I've got so many that I don't even calculate into my monthly spend. I actually couldn't tell you how much money I am spending on subscriptions. But yeah, Disney Plus, thank you for outing me on the podcast. Cheers, Lisa.
Oh, you're welcome. No, but I mean, I can relate. I people subscribe to all these kind of things, and that number will only increase as we are seeing businesses transform their models into this space as well. And for now, maybe the biggest need here is to be able to identify and get a grip of what subscriptions you have. But the next step is when more and more industries are transforming into this business model, and you want to discover and find new subscriptions and understand what is in your space of interests. And this Minna helps implement to the banks all over the world, so that you can log in and get all this information, and also take action on them, manage them, cancel them, or improve them. And yeah.
So basically, what you're saying is I need to use Minna because I'm gonna not be able to afford my groceries soon enough. If I can go with my Disney Plus subscription, is what we figured out.
Exactly.
I think with Minna, I'm really keen to actually go into it a little bit more, because I know, like you say, blitz scaling, something I never heard before, but I'm definitely going to put that into my repertoire. But how are you actually then, I suppose, setting up the recruitment process now? What are your plans in terms of timeframes? You mentioned obviously massive growth, so yeah, just give us an overview on how you're going to do that.
Yeah. At Minna, I'm our talent acquisition manager. What that means right now is that I'm driving all our recruitment processes forward, and that is, of course, how we intend to grow. Our ambition has always been, and in our history, you can see that we have more than doubled our own size every year, and this year is no exception to that. So we are going from the talent pool we have today to double that when we close
No
2021, which
pressure.
is comes with exactly. It's a fantastic challenge, but it is a challenge, and my contribution into this is, of course, to find new talents to join us. And we do this as a kind of matchmaking experience. I mean, you've already heard me talk about relationships
Yep.
and the importance of aligning needs. So this comes maybe as no surprise. And this is also the way that we are paving the way for our new talent, so that we can have a flying start together during the onboarding, always focusing on that matchmaking and aligning
Yeah,
needs
I
and
think that's really
perspectives
important,
and
like you say,
inspiration. And
because
yeah,
people take, I suppose,
absolutely.
enjoyment out of different things in a business, don't they? So it's making sure that you match Minna to them, but also they match to Minna at the same time. So how would you go about doing that?
Exactly. And yeah, and I mean, it's never to find the best
Yeah,
talent per se. It is to find the talent that will become its absolute best at
yeah,
Minna and who will make Minna the absolute best. And not everyone will get their happiness from building a unicorn, which is our ambition and what
hmm
we are doing. It's fun, but it's super hard, and it's not for everyone. And you need to align those needs and wants. And for us, a lot in our business is about transparency, and that is exactly how we want this
yeah,
recruitment to be as well. We are never trying to sell anything. We're simply opening the door to reveal what's inside, and then it's up to you or whoever I'm meeting to decide for themselves: am I attracted by this? Is
yeah.
this how I want to devote my life? And we also, because I mean, it is a devotion, and you do devote your life in many senses to the work that you are performing. And I
Yeah.
think joining a startup is definitely about devotion, if anything.
Like you say, especially at
And
the start, because the start's probably harder than it is anywhere else, just because of the size of the
mm,
company and getting the brand out there.
mm,
So when you're
yeah,
actually
yeah.
interviewing somebody for you and Lisa, how do you know
Mm,
that they've got that passion?
mm. So we tend to spend a little bit of extra time getting to know every talent that we meet, and it's never the kind of traditional interview process and then here is your contract. Our ambition is to commit to marriage. Again, here speaking
You
about
love the
relations.
relationships, yeah.
Uh, I do. They are fantastic. It's the collective part,
Yeah.
being part of a community and being around other people. So it is very much a long-term commitment here. And marriage could, or a relationship doesn't have to be, but some part of human interaction should be based on honesty and trust, just as much as love and attraction. And people I mean, the people marrying each other is, of course, the team itself. So we always want to include the team that you'd be working with in our process. And this gives the team a chance to get to know the talent and for the talent to get to know the team. And they are actually the ones ultimately deciding if they want to marry, meaning hire this person.
Yeah.
So the team has mandate to decide, I want to work with you
That's
and
quite cool.
only you. And then we proceed with that hiring. And what this process does is that it lays a fantastic foundation and sort of a psychological contract, knowing that you've chosen each other, which again then paves that or structures that good foundation for the
Yeah.
onboarding and to get started.
And you get that commitment, like you say, and then that's all about building the
Mm.
culture. If you hire like-minded people or people that want to be part of it, then the business will grow a lot quicker. And well, your numbers speak for themselves so far, don't they, Lisa? So you must be doing something right for sure. I think,
Hopefully,
yeah,
hopefully.
fingers crossed. I think what one challenge that could come from that though. So obviously, I know that you're growing so quickly. You're hiring loads of people to the team, which is absolutely amazing. And Mina are actually making waves, but how do you go about the onboarding? Because if you're hiring so many people and bringing so many people on, how do you go about onboarding, especially now in a different time?
Yeah. And I think to kind of set the scene, I actually thought to share some of my own
Yeah.
experiences when joining Minna, because I did so in June.
Hmm.
So it was midst of the pandemic and with everything that went on around that. And what made it extra special is that I also happened to have my very first day with Minna in an all hands hackathon. We have those twice a year. It's a great innovation hub,
Yeah.
but it is a slightly different start than what most people would get. So I know that I am to come into the office. I know that we have this all hands hackathon. I'm of course super nervous.
Yeah.
I'm sweating, even though if I love people and I love meeting new ones, it is a
Yeah.
nervous moment
A lot of
when
new
you
people.
ring that
Yeah.
doorbell the first morning. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And then Red comes in. He's one of our engineering managers. He opens the door when I ring on it.
Hmm.
And I haven't met him before. I have no idea what he is doing with Minna. I was expecting my manager to open the door, so I was a bit, stumbled. And before I even get the chance to put my foot in, he greets me with this ridiculously big smile, saying "Welcome home." And for me,
That's nice. Yeah.
um, I mean, that was the best possible start, and this just continued. So that set one of the first experiences, right, which the
Yeah.
onboarding is all about. And then I come in and I see my desk, and I find this flower. It's a little homegrown elephant ear flower. It has a note on it from Mina, who's my manager, and she says on this note that I'm looking forward to seeing you grow.
Yeah.
And it is so childish and it's so ridiculous, but it's also so fantastically welcoming and boosting. Um, that is just one other example of how you can implement these small details into the onboarding that actually makes a difference.
Yeah.
And
100%.
what also gave, yeah, exactly. And what also gave this incredible welcoming factor and feeling is that we're using Slack as our internal
Yeah.
communication tool. If you don't know it and if you're not using it, use it. It's awesome.
Yeah, I think
And
everybody's on Slack at the moment, aren't they? It's like every 2 seconds, it's message here, message there.
oh
But it
yes,
definitely does work.
oh yes, it's fantastic. It's a holy grail, but it can also be a bit messy when you
Yeah.
come in and you need to start navigating and you grasp the organization and you look at all the channels that you have. And we have a channel called Tech,
Okay.
and this is the most frequent channel for me that very first day. It pings constantly, and I have no idea yet as to what to expect, how we're communicating, and how is the structure of that. But what I know is that tech is our values. That's why we
Right.
run and
Okay.
how we run, and why we do everything we do. So it's our culture. And to put that into context, it means that we're talented, enthusiastic, caring, hungry.
Hmm.
And the tech channel is the channel where we praise and appreciate our colleagues when they have
Yeah.
done something extraordinary. Because I mean, you want to be praised, right?
100%.
Yeah, and it turned out that people here at Minna is so excited by the success of others that we actually finally had to limit the channel's notifications to time slots during the day, because being blitzscaling or scaling is also about being able to keep that
Yeah.
radical focus and efficiency throughout the days. We had to limit these notifications to actually not disturb more. And if that isn't the ultimate proof that I could get my very first day, that the culture is something so lived and something so present, and that the people here is so caring and enthusiastic to see all these other people being talented and hungry, then I don't know how to explain it and put it into context. So that is another one of those great examples when it comes to onboarding or
Yeah.
culture and learning overall. Praise each other and make sure that the culture is lived through everything that you do.
100%. I think
So yeah,
we've got
yeah.
our channel as well internally, and I have to say, although 99% of it is positive, it's always good
Mm,
to take we'll make a joke of somebody as well in the right way, of course. But no, I definitely think it does work. It helps builds that culture, and like you say, that impression on day one, and then even the tech channel just shows that you are home, like you mentioned. And it's probably going to make you stick, isn't it? And transparency is something you've touched on quite a lot there. And I think Minna go one step further on a Friday from what we talk about, don't they?
Yeah, you and I managed to catch up just before we went into this call, and I shared that every Friday we have this also very startup-y, but also very fun. So we have these weird names for all our all-hand meetings. This one is called AMA, so Ask Me Anything, Common Perception, and we have that for our management team. And then followed, we have a popcorn demo session where everyone can pop like a beautiful popcorn that they are, and share some demo of what they have been crunching or working on. But these Ask Me Anything sessions, they are with our founders and the leadership team, and we have a software tool called Slido, which is a fantastic tool. If you're not using it already, I strongly recommend. It's very similar to Menti or something else, but you can be completely anonymous, and then you just feed in whatever questions that you're keen to get answered or that you want to discuss.
That's pretty cool, actually.
And they come in live. So this is just an open live stream, no polished surfaces, and there's nothing that we can't talk about. People just bombard with whatever curious questions. No, whatever curious questions that they might have. And I have been with Minna since June last year. So what is that now, closing into 8-9 months or something like that? And we have this every Friday, and I still haven't heard anyone in our leadership team not answering a question. And I mean, that is a so heart-filling experience to also see that we have that enormous level of trust and transparency in the organization, that you just talk about everything, which is also great.
I think that's really key. You mentioned transparency quite a few times, and it's the continuing to build, isn't it? I think it's focusing on something that you said throughout this whole podcast, Lise, which has resonated with me, is actually learning and actually building on the experiences. So don't just settle for a great experience, make it even better. It's something that you continually said, and I think that's definitely a key takeaway from me. I think to wrap this up quite nicely, actually, so I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit here. And if you were to give, I suppose, 3 key pieces of advice to the people that are listening in to onboarding or even going through that training process, what advice would you give them?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I'll try to summarize here the hard learnings that I've gotten through the years working with the area. But we were in on this already previously, which was communication. Over communicate. Set extremely clear expectations, both for the new talent that is to be onboarded, but also for the manager that is going to onboard someone. And of course, we have separate, so we have the community manager and team driver. So we always have 2 people onboarding the same talent. Both of them needs to have so clear expectations and know what to come. Erase insecurities. That will create an environment of trust, which will feed into innovation, creativity, allowing yourself to be who you are. And so over communicate in the beginning. That would be maybe the most important, but definitely the first one that comes into mind. And then I also touched upon this actually a bit earlier, but tap into the fantastic pre-boarding period from when you sign to the first day. The talents here, they are so curious and they are so excited to get to know the company. So utilize this time before they are drown into the details regarding their job or understanding the hidden culture parts, or just basic stuff as how to heat up my lunchbox. I mean, that is a question that people will have the first day. So why don't we utilize the time before all these questions even pop up to really dig into understanding the company, where we are going, why we are doing what we are doing? It's a fantastic period to really tap into that curiosity. It will pay off so much. And okay, final one. Oh, now we only have one left. Okay, so I think the most relevant one for me, and what we also saw at Semcon when we released
Yeah,
the new onboarding experience, is work smart.
yeah,
What can be automated? How can you scale the processes? Strive to automate all the management parts so that you can use your time to provide true value, which is being warm and inclusive and present instead of being stuck and administrating stuff. Be there.
yeah.
And in order for you to be able to be so, automate, work smart. It's a great advice. It's sometimes hard to live up to. We still struggle. We are still in the midst of how to scale everything at Minna to work smart, but it's so important.
I think that's really key. I think for me today, actually, Lisa, I want to say a massive thank you. I think three big points there, but my key takeaway from this actually is something that I hadn't heard before, and it links in with your second point actually on the pre-boarding, but more that the analogy of the train ticket. So not only think about the pre-boarding, but then also think about that return journey at the end, because I think often that's forgotten in the business. They've got a great process of, like you say, getting somebody on board, taking them on the journey, but then maybe not so much the secondary journey, or if they're going to come back and go forward on the next time. So I think for me, that's a real key point that I've taken away, and that I shouldn't subscribe to Disney Plus. But anyway, there we go. But I think, no, I just want to say thank you, Lisa, for taking part. It's been, from my side, a great episode. I'm definitely confident that the guys listening will have learned something. So I just want to say a massive thank you from our side, and hopefully we can add value to the people listening. As always, guys, this will be available on our Impala Insights page, our YouTube channel, and I'll be launching season 2 on Spotify in the next week or two. But no, Lisa, really appreciate your time, and thank you again.
Thank you so much, Joe.
No worries.
Extremely fun to be here.
Yeah, we nailed it in one take as well, which is good. It's perfect. But no, cheers, guys. Thank you for listening in.